Well, welcome. In this video, we'll talk about pre-market routine or pre-session routine. And this is something, if you indulge me for a second here, this is something I'm going to start trying to do, or I'll see how it actually works out. I'm releasing content on the blog. I'll be releasing posts. I'm also I've started to outline a book. I don't want to write a book that is not going to add anything to the trading sphere. So I'm looking to see where is there possibility where there might be something missing, or there's an opportunity for an additional book. I'm looking at, if you've read that book, Trading Sardines, I'm looking at something maybe along those lines. But I just mentioned that because I'm going to be working on posts. And the other thing that I thought would be good to do with that is try to be very concise in my written content, really provide tips or advice, step-by-step tips and advice and examples. But there'll be cases where it would be helpful to maybe have a 1 or 2 minute video that is alongside that piece of content that I'm releasing. And if I can expand on a couple concepts that would be more helpful, like in a chart, or more helpful live, that's something I would do in addition to releasing the content. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. It's going to be kind of like a reaction video somewhat. Now, this post is about pre-market routine. Everybody should have a pre-market routine. In here, I share really a proper pre-market routine will prepare your thinking, mind, body, and intuition and your conviction for the trading session. I don't like to call it pre-market. I like to call it pre-session. And one of the reasons for that is because let's say that you trade in the intraday, and like today I had lunch. So I had a morning trading session. And then I broke for lunch for about 45 minutes, and then I came back. Well, you should have a pre-session routine. You shouldn't just jump back into the charts after your lunch, for instance. You should have some type of, and it might just be a 1 to 2 or 3 minute routine, because you've already done a lot of your pre-session routine in the morning, where you've looked at the news, you've looked at other things, but you shouldn't just jump back in. You should get a feel for it. You should make sure there's nothing that's happened that you should be aware about. I mean, obviously, if something changed in the chart, you would see it, but that's really what you should have. So that's what I do. I before I sit down and take a trade, or if I'm still in a trade because my stops haven't been hit, for instance, then generally what I do is I go through just a quick looking at the news, just making sure that I'm still reading sentiment right, and rechecking some of my levels. So that's what I do. So if we outline a good pre-session routine, it's preparing your mind and body. It's planning for known events and news releases, gauging market, crowd, and sentiment, and then your TA, your technical analysis. Now, if you're in the training or you're trading the Rexdog system, then you already have the system, and you're really just looking at the key momentum areas, the key levels that you should be tracking anyways, like daily, weekly, and everything else like that. I also included something that I've done before, which is the pre-trade mindset routine sheet. If you haven't seen this, this is basically a PDF. You could look at it as quote unquote a contract. It's something that you would personalize for yourself. You would put your biggest mistakes or habits or things that you need to avoid. And you need to really remind yourself that these are things that you should not be doing. These are things that, it might be positive things too. It's not always negative things, but these are things that you're working on. So you can see here, you can download this, you can access this. This is something that I use in my session even today, where it's a lot longer than this because I have different things that I work on. But this is an example of kind of where I started. And yeah, there's a signature line down there and a date and time. I think there's value to actually signing something like this and doing it. Now, if you want more detail on that, there's a video where I go through this in detail. The next thing is known events and news releases. You should never start a trading session without knowing if there's events on the calendar. It's just, you should never do it. So these are the two sites that I like the best, Econ Day and Daily FX. You can look at those. The other thing that I do want to touch on here that I did talk about here is one of the things that's, if you're trading the markets day in and day out, you have a general feel for how the market's been moving and what's happening in the market. But you still should look at the actual market in a way, I describe it or look at it from the outside looking in. And what you really want to figure out and what you want to see is, what does the market care about? What are the dominant emotions driving the decisions of the crowd? And do these themes, do they align with what you see in your charts? Now, you'll see here on the post every now and then when there's something that's relevant or important, what there'll be a little kind of subsection here or a block quote where I just kind of highlight, go beyond this key area. And what I really want to highlight here, and this is something that I see often, especially in crypto a lot, why is Bitcoin moving? Why is Bitcoin doing this? Look, you'll never know. So you should be dumb about it. You should really not care because you're never going to know. You're never going to really know the catalyst for what moves something. So you can look for clues. Now, if you're a catalyst type of trader where you are looking for some type of news events that move something, then what I have here isn't relevant to you anyways because you've already got some kind of way that you're tracking catalysts. But for me, I don't care. I designed a trading system where it doesn't matter. I designed a trading system that tracks momentum. You trade momentum. So if something did happen, it would already show up in the momentum indicators anyways. But I don't even try to figure out why anything's moving. I don't try to figure out why Facebook dropped 25% in a day. Maybe it's about earnings. Maybe it's about, who knows? It doesn't matter. You'll never know the answer. And you're wasting your time and effort doing that. But what I can say is that there is elements here where like you want to get a general feel what the market cares about. And you can do that just by reading headlines and just getting a feel. I absolutely hate Bloomberg. I can't listen to it. And I just don't like the financial news media. But there's one thing you can really understand is that they're in the business for clicks. They're in the business for views. So you would reason that if they're talking about something and you see a trend in the financial media, that they have some kind of analytics that says that the market would quote unquote care about it. So that's something that you should maybe pay attention to. You should look for clues in your technical analysis, whether or not your technical analysis aligns with that perspective. So that's really what you're trying to figure out. You don't really care what the gurus think. You don't want to cloud your trading. You don't want to do any of that. You just want to get a general feel of what's driving the emotions of the crowd. What does the crowd believe? What do they think? Now, you can obviously, since 90% of retail traders are typically wrong and losing money, if the crowd you go to is that crowd, well, you probably want to fade that crowd quite a bit. You probably want to be very skeptical of the things that they believe. So that's something to keep in mind. The final thing is technical analysis. Now, I don't go into too much detail here because really that's dependent on your own trade system. There is a link here to a section in the training. So if you're in the training, there's a link in here talking about bias and really why that's the foundation of where you start. What's most important in your TA is that you have a step-by-step process, meaning that you follow the same thing every single day. And the reason for that is because your pre-session trading routine is the foundation of your trading. So if you have something screwed up in your pre-session routine, it could screw up all your trading for that day, or just all your trading period. So you really want to have a really solid pre-session routine, and you want to track that in your journal because you might find that actually you reading too much news might cloud your conviction, might change the way that you might, and I say this a lot, you might argue with the chart. Here's a good example. A good example is from March 2020. I mean, everybody remembers this, but during that whole sell-off in March, everybody was always looking for a bottom. At least pro traders were looking for the bottom. And well, I remember specifically, this is back when I still kind of listened to Bloomberg every now and then. So I had that on in the background, and then I was looking at the news, and everything was doom and gloom. But the charts that I was looking at, and I do share example of charts, where the Rexdog system was pointing that, hey, momentum is shifting. There's momentum long. But if I listened to the news and everything out there, we were headed for another Great Depression. It was going to be, the world was going to end. Everything was, it just was, financial world at least was really going to see something it hadn't seen in over 100 years, for instance. Well, the charts during that time and trading those 2 or 3 days were not backing up that narrative at all. The narrative, and it was clear every single day. And this is kind of one of my recent where I have a pro trader where I'm like, hey, I'm a pro trader. I always have to remind myself that I'm a pro trader. But is that I didn't care what anybody else said. I traded with conviction on the long side. And I went into some really good swings in the equity markets, did some good Forex trades. I did some really great futures trades. And mainly because I'm not going to argue with the chart. I don't care what everybody else is thinking. Of course, you've got that whole, when everybody's fearful, you should be, whatever that phrase is. But whatever the phrase is, right? So you could take solace in that. But I was just trading the charts. I was just trading my system. I was just trading momentum. So that's one of those things. This is a good example of that, of really doing pre-market, but not letting pre-session, I should say, doing pre-session and doing the news analysis and sentiment analysis and not letting it creep into your thoughts, not letting it creep into your trading system. That's really key. So the final thing here and the big takeaway is your pre-trading session routine sets the tone and foundation of your trading. It's critical. It should be something that's written down. And it's one thing in your trading you should not ignore. And of course, if you break up your trading session, you should have a kind of a pre-session that's usually longer. And then if you come back to the charts, you should have at least a 2 to 5 minute kind of pre-session. And then another post that I'm working on is actually how to stop revenge trading. And there's actually a how you come back to the charts after you've noticed you revenge traded. That is a pre-session routine. So that's all in this video. You'll find a link to this post down below. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning. Also, you'll find a link to the Discord, so you'll definitely want to join that and subscribe here on YouTube. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.